We all like to believe that we are kind, fair, incapable of cruelty or inhuman acts. But what if the right or the wrong circumstances could awaken something in you that you never knew existed? Something dark, something monstrous. The truth is that the line between good and evil is not as clear as we want to believe. And that line, however thin it may seem, lies closer to us than we care to admit. We live in a world of difficult choices, extreme situations, and powerful influences, capable of turning even the best intentions into actions we would never imagine ourselves committing. Today, we explore this uncomfortable but essential reality. We dive into the depths of human nature to understand what pushes us across that line, and, more importantly, what we can do to resist it. Have you ever considered that your morality, the compass guiding your actions, may be as flexible as a leaf in the wind? What defines us as good or bad is far less stable than we would like to think. Morality, often viewed as a fortress, can collapse in seconds. Under certain conditions, a person may suddenly behave in ways that challenge everything they believed themselves to be. Philip Zimbardo described this moral fragility as a kind of situational transformation. He argued that we are not static beings. We are shaped by context, environmental pressure, and, most critically, the narratives we construct to justify our actions. One striking example is the case of Ivan Frederick, an American soldier involved in the abuses at Abu Ghraib prison. Before that, he was ordinary. He loved his family, believed he was serving his country honorably, considered himself moral. Yet placed in an environment where violence was normalized, dehumanization was routine, and moral oversight was absent, he became capable of acts he likely never imagined. Was he inherently evil, or was he shaped by the situation? Context can create a dangerous gap between who we believe we are and how we act when circumstances become extreme. Our morality is often written not in stone, but in sand. This becomes evident in one of the most famous psychological studies ever conducted, the Stanford Prison Experiment. In just a few days, ordinary, psychologically healthy students adopted the roles of guards and prisoners. The simulation rapidly turned into a nightmare. Those given uniforms and authority began humiliating and abusing others. What drove them to cross that line? And if you had been there, would you truly have acted differently? Moral fragility does not exist only in extreme experiments. It appears in everyday life. Have you ever taken something that wasn't yours, justifying it by saying it didn't really matter? Or laughed at a cruel joke simply because everyone else did? These seemingly minor choices are steps on a path toward moral collapse. They raise a crucial question. To what extent do our actions reflect who we truly are, and to what extent are they merely the product of our environment? Context does not merely influence us, it transforms us. Why do we obey? The question seems simple, yet the answer exposes one of the most disturbing aspects of human nature. From childhood, we are taught to obey authority, parents, teachers, leaders. Obedience often supports social order. But what happens when authority demands something that contradicts our own values? How much are we willing to sacrifice to avoid conflict or to please someone in power? The experiment conducted by Stanley Milgram offered a chilling answer. Participants were instructed to administer electric shocks to another person for incorrect answers. With each mistake, the voltage increased. The person on the other side screamed, begged, pleaded for the experiment to stop. Yet the authority figure, dressed in a white lab coat, insisted, "Continue, the experiment requires it." Around 65% of participants obeyed, all the way to the highest, potentially lethal level. Why? Because the command came from authority. Power creates the illusion of transferred responsibility. We tell ourselves that if something goes wrong, it won't be our fault. It will belong to the one giving the orders. This separation between action and consequence becomes deeply dangerous. Blind obedience is not confined to laboratories. It runs throughout history, from soldiers claiming they were just following orders, to mass tragedies like Jonestown, where hundreds complied with a charismatic leader's command to die. In these cases, the issue was not innate evil, but the failure to question authority. How many times have you followed instructions without reflection, simply because they came from someone above you? And what if the demand had been truly wrong? Would you have had the courage to resist, or chosen the comfort of compliance? Obedience is powerful, but it is not absolute. It can be resisted, through courage and responsibility, through recognizing that, in the end, we are always accountable for our actions, regardless of who gives the order. The danger intensifies when obedience combines with another destructive process, dehumanization. When we stop seeing others as human, cruelty becomes much easier to justify. Dehumanization begins with language, with labels. History offers grim examples. Jews were called rats in Nazi Germany. Tutsis were called cockroaches during the Rwandan genocide. These words did not merely describe, they reshaped perception, making violence seem acceptable. Yet dehumanization happens daily, in subtle ways. When we refer to groups as parasites, threats, or lazy, we create emotional distance and a moral divide. Albert Bandura demonstrated how simple labeling erodes empathy and enables cruelty. Change the language, and behavior follows. Online, this effect grows stronger. Anonymity turns people into avatars. Digital dehumanization creates ideal conditions for harassment and hate. The situation worsens when personal responsibility disappears. When we believe our actions carry no consequences. When blame is diffused among many, crowds, hierarchies, systems, all create the same illusion. I only did my part. And that is precisely how harm becomes normalized. So what prevents us from sliding into cruelty when everything seems to push us in that direction? The answer lies in conscious choice. Resisting evil is not a gift. It is a skill, developed moment by moment, through small acts that affirm our humanity and responsibility. Think of the participants in Milgram's experiment who refused to continue. They were not stronger or smarter than the rest. They simply chose responsibility, even under pressure. Heroism also appears in ordinary moments, in refusing silence, in choosing honesty, in rejecting comfortable self-deception. As Zimbardo argued, heroism is not reserved for extraordinary people or historic moments. It exists whenever someone chooses to act rightly, despite social pressure. Conscious choice demands one more essential ability, seeing others in their full complexity and vulnerability. Without this connection, our decisions become cold, driven by fear or convenience rather than conscience. When we recognize others as fully human, we remember something essential. Ultimately, we are all walking the same fragile path. And that realization changes everything. Thank you for watching. I hope this gave you something to reflect on. Until next time.